You are in, you just left Perth and you went to Singapore.
Perth, oh, I haven't recorded about Singapore yet.
No.
Oh, Singapore, none of our flights were like directly point to point. There were always some predetermined track that the Oceanographic Office, in Naval Oceanographic Office, laid out for us to, so that they would eventually have complete geomagnetic survey of the world. So every time we flew a different track. And that track when we left Perth to go to Singapore was just a straight shot across Indonesia, whatever we go to. So Singapore, that was in the 60s, so it was before the big boom in Singapore, which wasn't, so it wasn't really that dynamic city it is now, with the huge skyscrapers and the tremendous booming economy. It was pretty much a sleepy, post-colonial British city. Not much to write home about. In 1966, I guess.
What did you do? You just stayed overnight there?
Oh, we stayed a couple nights, I think. And I stayed in the Raffles Hotel, and I do have a slide of that hotel, which is a colonial era British hotel with a huge lobby. You can have your warm British beer or your gin, pink gin, that's gin with bitters, served by the Singaporean young gentleman in a turban and a white waiter's coat. And overhead they had those huge ceiling fans that were all run from a single motor, and yet the individual fans were connected by leather belts to the central motor. And there's a large network of these leather straps and belts going through the ceiling, exposed, rotating these big fans. Interesting to look at for about 5 minutes. And that was not much to do in Singapore.
What were the fans run by? Electricity or
Oh, a big
power?
motor someplace, I don't know. I guess it was, well, it didn't make a lot of noise, so I guess there was an electric motor somewhere. So when we left Singapore, we went to what used to be Ceylon, and it's now Sri Lanka, an island off the southeast tip of India, a large island. It was hit by the recent tsunami in 2004, the day after Christmas. Anyway, the only thing I remember of a note in Colombo was the snake charmers all over the damn place, on the sidewalks. I mean, there were a dime a dozen. These guys with cobra snakes in baskets playing their Ceylonese flutes. It was almost a hazard when you're walking down the street. There's so damn many snakes. So after Sri Lanka, we flew across the Indian Ocean to Africa, Kenya, and landed in the capital city, Nairobi. And on the Kenyan-Tanzanian border, the famous mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, yeah, it's just about right smack on the equator, but it's snow-capped. It's so tall. And we diverted our flight into Nairobi so we could fly by Mount Kilimanjaro and sort of have a sightseeing tour. Anyway, we went on and arrived in Nairobi. I was surprised at the number of mosques in the city. Evidently it was on the east coast of Africa. The cities there were settled primarily by the Arab Muslims much before the British and French settled and colonized Africa. And Nairobi was quite a clean town. And that was right after independence from England. So it still had a lot of the English colonial flavor to it. It was very clean, very well lighted, very orderly city. I think it's a mess right now.
It
So
is.
one night I remember my father telling me that in the evening the mosques broadcast some kind of a prayer chant. So I sat in front of their mosque for must have been an hour and a half waiting for this thing to go on. And I guess because it wasn't a Friday night, they didn't do it. It must be only Friday nights where they broadcast. There I was sitting out on the damn curb in front of this mosque for about an hour and a half waiting for the chant to go on. And everybody was walking by me like I was nuts, I guess. And the most memorable thing about that was I went to a game park tour, and we hired a Volkswagen minibus, I guess, and toured this game park an hour or so outside the city limits. We saw all manner of wild African beasts there. I had some postcards and some slides from that era. And while we're out there, there's another of those Volkswagen vans was driving around like a maniacs, or off the road, bouncing through the area there. And it wasn't until after I got back that the word around the hotel was that the Beatles were in town that day for something of a concert in Nairobi, and had taken a tour of that same game park. So apparently our guess was that was the Beatles out there raising up on the game park. It must have been stoned. The other thing that that evening I was sitting in the sidewalk bar in the hotel, and Stuart Granger, who was an aging American film star from the 40s, the Great White Hunter and Africa kind of roles, was sitting at the table next to us. I wouldn't have recognized him, but the older people on the crew knew who it was. Or just kind of, from Nairobi, I think we went south to South Africa, I believe, didn't we?
Cape Town.
Yeah. Flew down to Cape Town. And in Cape Town, the memorable things from Cape Town. We hired a car to take a tour of the Cape, what's that southern point of Africa called? The Cape of Good Hope?
Yeah.
Yeah. We went down and the tour guide took us to the top of a cliff that overlooked the southern tip of Africa, where you could actually, you can honest to God see the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean where they met, because we're up a couple hundred feet. And because of the difference in temperature, the water looks different. So you could see on one side the left side, the Indian Ocean, and the right side, the South Atlantic. I think the Indian Ocean was much warmer, and there appeared blue, where the Atlantic water was green. And you could look it out from that Cape of Good Hope and see the distinct line where the two oceans met. We also went on a tour of a game park down there, and the car got chased by an ostrich. I think I have some photographs of that too, of the ostrich chasing after the car. The blatant racism in South Africa at that time was one of the memorable things, that there were signs everywhere about white only or colored entrance. And at nighttime, all non-white people had to be out of town unless you had a specific pass, almost like the badges we wear now to get in the office. And the police were very adamant about checking any non-white people if they had the proper work permits to be in after dark in the city of Cape Town, because they wanted no blacks in the city. Within the city, not just in their district, the entire city was off limits to blacks. And in the morning, the commuter trains would come into town, jam-packed with the work-day workers, hanging off onto everything on the train. And they would unload and go about their business, and, you know, working at the very low end of the wage scale, and then load back on those trains in the afternoon or early evening and get the hell out of town. I went to a movie there one night, and they allowed smoking in the movie hall, which I thought was very odd. It was a smoke-filled theater. But the town itself was kind of a dull town, very British.
Cape Town.
Yeah, you can have your English breakfast at the hotel. And one thing I noticed about all those British in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, was that the napkins at the dinner tables were always heavily starched. And laying a napkin on your lap was like laying a board. You know, and you certainly couldn't wipe your face with it, like wiping your face with a board.
Scrape it.
Yeah, you scrape the food residue off. When we left Cape Town, I believe I went to the Ivory Coast, Côte d'Ivoire, city of Abidjan. It was a former French colony, and at that time was a very proper, clean city. I guess it's a hell of a mess right now, though. And they just had a recent revolution there. But at that time, again, it was one of those very orderly, clean, well-lighted, apparently efficiently run cities. There was nothing very outstanding about it, other than it was one of the hottest places I've ever been. Hot, humid.
Have no match.
Oh, so I've been back to civilized driving: South Africa, Kenya, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Singapore, and Australia, New Zealand. All those cities prior to Abidjan on the Ivory Coast were former British colonies, and all drove on the wrong side of the street. So it must have been a period of about 3 months, or 2 months, I mean, where I've been driving on the wrong side of the street. So now we're back to normal. So Abidjan was not a city of any particular interest, other than it was French and hot.
You take pictures.
I don't recall having any. That was on my first trip, wasn't it? I don't know if I had a camera. Oh, was that we're on the second trip? Yeah, I have a camera now. I don't recall having any photographs of the Ivory Coast. So we left Abidjan and headed to Brazil. But on the way, we were told to find, which were well mapped, the rocks of St. Peter and St. Paul, which are just a rocky outcropping, uninhabited, and they're not habitable because it's just the waves and surf flush over this hunk of rock sticking up onto the Atlantic, several hundred miles off the coast of that piece of Brazil that sticks way out in the Atlantic Ocean. So by that time it was morning, because we left Abidjan at night, and we had to find these rocks. So I was the navigator. I got as close to it as what I thought, and then the pilots picked it up on the radar. These islands aren't islands; they're just rock outcroppings, probably too small to be on a map. But for some reason, the scientists wanted to be able to fly over those. They were collecting data on these geomagnetic surveys to support the theory of continental drift, which at that time was an unproven and new idea. So the geomagnetic information that we collected actually went in as evidence to support the then new theory of continental drift.
Looks like they're trying to connect Ivory Coast possibly with Brazil, because that's where it would fit in there.
It was, I don't know if any particular spot, but
Possibly.
just the whole idea of Africa at one time being connected to South America. And that rocks of St. Peter, St. Paul, I think being on the part of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Oh, so much for that. And we flew on, I think, to the city of Recife, Brazil, which is around that hump of Brazil, which just sticks out into the Atlantic. And that, the only notable thing about that town is it just was ungodly hot and stunk. We stayed there 2 days. Our hotel was right on the beach. Beautiful, beautiful beach, except there was sand fleas all over the damn sand. You couldn't comfortably sit out on the beach. You sit down, they're covered little, they called them sand fleas. They look like miniature flies all over your body, and they bit. So the beach it looked beautiful, but it was not worth the damn far sitting on it or going into the water. I think from Recife I went to Rio de Janeiro, I think.
San Juan.
Oh, okay. We this time we're heading back up to home. We're on the last legs. We went from Recife, Brazil, north to San Juan, Puerto Rico. I have nothing to say about San Juan, other than I guess I was there in and out.
3 days.
From San Juan on back up to the Tuxet River. Anyway, that was the end of trip number 2, I believe.
That was December 9th, 1966. You want to go back?
Yeah, that was trip number 2.